coaches have so much to do. You know, it's hard to find time to videotape and go through your underwater technique with kids, much less trying to add race analysis to it. So what we're trying to do is say that the best way for you and the kids is to teach the kids what it is and how to do it, so that it takes that off your back, and you'd be surprised how much they learn. And I'll tell you, once the kids buy in and they understand this, it makes practices go so much better because they're bought in. They're invested in it. And so when you're talking about, taking a certain amount of kicks off the wall or whatever, they understand where you're going because they've done it. Is a quote from Ernie McGlishow in his book in 2016. An increase in average velocity of 0.05 will increase an athlete's time in 50 meters by nearly 0.3 to 0.4 seconds. It would improve a swimmer's time in the 100 meters somewhere over a second. Additionally, it would improve a 200 event about two seconds. So very little improvements, or very small improvements in either stroke rate or the stroke lengths can lead to impressive improvements in performance. And that's really what I want to kind of talk about. It doesn't take a whole lot of improvement on some of these components to really make a big difference. This is Abby, but if you look at it, the number of cycles, she was 53 to 49, so she was four cycles less. So that's certainly something. The breakout distance is where she made the biggest improvement. So breakout distance, she averaged 8.5 in 23, and John's going to talk about some of the things he did to work on that. In 24, she averaged 10.3. So, that's significant more. And if you go down to the next one, underwater velocity, I'm talking meters per second, 1.98, and then in 24, 2.29. That's really huge. And remember the slide that I just showed as far as just the small increase in velocity. So she increased both the distance that she was traveling underwater, and her velocity. So that's big improvement. Distance per stroke, if you look at it, she actually went less in 24. But the reason she went a little bit less was because she increased her stroke rate from 1.47 to 1.38. And what that did, if you jump down to surface velocity, 1.42, and then 24 she was 1.47. And again, I'll remind you what Ernie McGlishow's book says, that 0.05 did such an increase, and that's exactly the difference that she had in her surface velocity.
To go along with that, I thought I knew race data before I started working with Kevin. And to really see it displayed this way, to really dig into it, it's been really revealing. And even, if you go to the previous slide with Abby, you see the little differences, and she was, less than 2 meters different on each length. But if you really add it up, she was 15 meters farther underwater in 1 year than she was the previous year. So those little differences really do add up to a big difference. And it's been really interesting working with Kevin and learning from him. As you really dig into the data, sometimes you see some things you didn't see before.
This is Kara, a swimmer of mine from a few years ago. I picked this video because it's kind of a close-up and you can see it really good. But the easiest way to talk to kids about this, and this is kind of what you normally see. And what this is, it's like a video game. So kids will pick this up in a second. To do the analysis, you press 2 buttons. One button for everything but the turns and the finish, and then the other button for those. So you're pushing a button on the start, on the entry, on the breakout, and then every stroke cycle, and I'm going to explain that. As I turn this on, and I'm going to slow this down just a little bit, you're going to see at the bottom those dots, the start, The E was her entry when her hands hit. And then when her head breaks, it's going to go there. This is how I kind of teach the kids what these components mean. So now we're going to get into stroke cycle. So when her hands hit in front, every time her hands hit in front, we're pressing that button. And so it's going to give us how many cycles she did. It's going to give us the distance she traveled. And then it's going to give us the velocity. As she comes into the turn and she hits with her hands, we press the other button. As she pushes off, this is Kara right here. As she pushes off, we press it again. And now we go back through it. Every time her hands are hitting in front, and it's charting this, and it'll put it into the algorithm. On backstroke, after the head breaks, when the first hand hits, and here it was her right hand, every time that right hand hits, I'm going to hit the button. So again, it's giving us how many cycles she's taking. It's going to give us the distance she traveled, and then it's going to give us the velocity. So breaststroke, as the head reaches the highest point to when it does again. That's the cycle in breaststroke. The only difference is, just like backstroke, when the first hand hits, you're going to hit that button there. When it hits again, you're going to do it again. And then it gives you this. And it basically gives you the breakout in time, the breakout in meters, the distance that she went, the velocity that she went. It'll give you how many cycles she did of each length, each stroke. It'll give you the stroke rate. It'll give you the distance per cycle. And then it'll give you the surface velocity and the turn time. This is from Big Ten this year. This is also the 200 back. John asked me to analyze this, and I did. And he said she really struggles with her turns. She's getting killed. Her turns are just horrible. He didn't say that. Her turns are not great. So anyway, so I do the analysis of this, and you look over here at the turns, and all the way on the right turns there, 1.0, 0.9, 0.9, 1.0, 0.9, 1.2, so that's not good, 0.9. Turns aren't that bad. But if you go to the graph, you kind of figure out why the turns appear to be bad. She's decelerating every length. You know, she comes up here, that gives you a minimum and a maximum of her stroke rate. So she changed 0.3 of a second on her stroke rate during the length. So she slows down into every turn. And 0.3 here, the next one 0.3, just about 0.3, and all of these are aiming downward. So John then changed his thought process a bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this was humbling. You would think I would notice that watching her as many times as I did, but we spent hours just working on the mechanics of her turns. I'm sure they got better, but that wasn't the real problem. And Kevin was able to really display it in a way that made, you can't miss what's going on. So, I hate to say it, but I was spinning my wheels for a long time with this same swimmer. And when you really look at the data, it really pinpoints a lot of times things you might miss. I guess that's what I take out of it. Also, it definitely humbles you. So
using information, a lot of people think race analysis is confusing, et cetera, but it's really not. And if you try to make it so that it's understandable to the kids, and you show them, and I'll tell you, if they do it, then they realize it's not that confusing. It's just valuable information that they can use. It needs to be understandable, and you need to relate it to the race. Race components can be integrated every day into daily training, and I think you need to do that. And like we kind of showed you, it does reveal some weaknesses and some things that you can work on.
A lot of what we're going to talk about from this point on is how to use this with an entire team. Because as you saw Kevin, he's really good at going through a race and using the program to get the data. The real advantage to that, really two advantages. One, they learn a lot more by doing it. It's really clear cut. When they go through this, watch the race, do the race analysis program, the amount that they learn about the races is greatly increased from us just telling them. But also, there is no way anybody in this room has enough time to sit down and go through this program and do the race analysis on 100 races after a swim meet. So this is a way to really make it efficient. For us, probably one of the couple things that we did that I thought were really good that we'll expand on next year. We had one meet in January, and we started using this year. I don't think we fully use it to its capabilities. But one thing we did was after a swim meet, we gave them a day. We said, you have to analyze at least one race. We had a 15-minute meeting. That's all it took. And every swimmer on the team had to stand up and just say at least one or two things that they learned from going through the race analysis program and getting the data. And even the language they used, the terms they knew, was greatly increased from any time I've ever talked about what they were doing in the races before. So it was really key. Second thing we did, and we're actually doing it this week too, we called it Coffee with the Coaches. It was an optional thing. We had all the swimmers that wanted to come to our team room after a practice. We had some snacks there, a little coffee, and we just went around the room. Somebody wanted to see their 400 IM from Big Tens. We pulled it up, went through the race analysis, watched it, and everyone chimed in on different things they could do. One of the better things I thought that really helped us, kind of get this information down. Obviously, one of the things you would expect when you do this before or after practice, somebody might have done it the night before. They have some questions. They have some things they want to discuss with you. So those individual conversations go on every day, all day after they start using this program, and then you can sort of zero in on what they're trying to do. Once again, with the whole team managing, the expectations and different components to what you want them to work on is pretty key. So this is something we posted every week. And this, you won't be able to read this whole chart, but it had their name, it had a focus drill, something technical, one or two things to technically work on for the week, and then one or two race components that we wanted them to focus on, and any quality sets or anything fast we did. So it might be, we want you to hold a 1.1 stroke rate on anything geared for the 100 backstroke, or every time you're doing this set you hold 10 kicks. So put in a grid, we just posted it. It was really simple, and it kept everyone on track for the week. The rest of that chart was simply what groups they were in each day. That's not really about this talk. This is another chart we make for each swimmer, just laminated. They have it in their equipment bag. The top part is obviously aerobic training paces, not what we're discussing. But on the bottom, just different paces, different emphasis. It could be a stroke count, it could be a stroke rate, it could be number of kicks, but something laminated just that they have so they can pull out anytime we're doing a set that's revolves around what we're looking for.
All right. So Abby, when I take a look at this, and the biggest things the things I start with when I take a look at race analysis is, and this was a early season meet. This is the 100 back. She went 57.2. I look at her breakout in meters, how far she went, and I look at her velocity. So 13 meters, 10.2, 9.5, 8.8. She's utilizing that pretty good. She could maybe, that last one, jump into the nines maybe or so and help it. And if you look over at her breakout meters per second, which is her velocity, she fell off to 1.89. And, to me, I'd like to see that maybe stay closer to 2. So she can certainly use some kick work. If you go over to her velocity on her surface, second from the right, 1.5, 1.5, 1.4, 1.3, to me, I'd like to keep that from going 1.3 and keep it up a little bit more. So if you go over to her stroke rate, she's 1.2, 1.3, 1.3, 1.3, and her distance per cycle, is pretty good. 1.9, 2.1, 1.9, is pretty good. But maybe if she elevated that stroke rate a little bit, maybe if she tried to hold closer to 1.2s all the way through that, and so let's play with that and let's see what that gives it if that bumps up the velocity some.
Okay, so this is just to highlight, a few things we were working on. I know you all have different training methods and things you do in practice, but this is what we were working on with her. Basically, we first tried to zero in on how many kicks she should take off each wall, how far she should go, and we'll actually talk about a way Kevin's come up with to do that a little bit better. But we were just trying to determine where she should be, and we kind of zeroed in on maybe 10 or 11 kicks. And then try to hold that obviously in every training set, whether it's power or quality, whatever. And then really, I guess the main thing is we wanted her to hold a little higher rate, a stroke rate. So we really tried to push her to hold 1.1, 1.2 as often as she could, and whether it's power, quality sets. You all do the same thing. But we were trying to be really specific based on the race data we saw and use that as, to really identify what we needed to improve on. So those are the things we really focused on.
And so this is, in November, after John was working on those things with her, this is what that hunter back looks like now. If you can see, breakout distance is a little bit better early, and then it falls off just a little bit at the end, but her velocity underwater is a little better. All of them are 2. She didn't fall under 2 meters per second at all, so I think that's really good. I think what he's doing is working. If you jump over to the velocity on the surface, 1.6, 1.6, 1.5, 1.4, she didn't get into that 1.3 at all. So I think working on stroke rate, if you look 1.1, 1.1, 1.26, 1.25, that is bringing her distance per cycle down just a hair, but it's improving her velocity. So sometimes that works. And with other kids, sometimes it's the other way around. You need to move their length better. So she seems to be somebody that doesn't think that she can go very far underwater, and struggles with that some, and struggled doing it in practice. So what I did is I had her do, using this software, I had her just do a 25, and she'd push off, and I had her go 7 kicks, break out, and then just swim easy. And I looked at what the breakout was there. Now let's go 9 kicks. Then let's go 11 kicks. Then let's go 13 kicks. And let's see where you're at. So her 11 kicks, and this is just with a GoPro, but you could do this at the side of the pool, it doesn't matter. So all we did is 11 kicks, break out, and then I said, just swim easy, it's all fine, although she flips over to her stomach, she swims real easy. The whole point here was to get that underwater. And so, as you can see, she went almost 12 and a half meters, and her velocity was at 1.8. And that's where, when John's saying he was trying to get her to hold 10 or 11 kicks, and for a long time, everybody has always said, try to have them kick 2 more than you want them to kick in the race, in practice, because they get used to doing that, the breath control, etc. So for her, if she does work at that 9, 10, 11 kick range, it seems to be about right. And I did this so that she would gain a little confidence and realize you're still traveling that fast, and you'll be able to do it in the race, but you have to practice it. You can't just do it in the race. And you've been there with so many swimmers. Another one, and Brinley in the 100 fly, another Purdue swimmer, early season, if you take a look at her numbers, same thing. the first thing I always look at is that underwater and see if she holds the velocity and how far she holds it. So you look here, she's pretty good underwater. 13.7, 11.1, 9.8, 7.6. I'd like to see maybe that 7.6 jump back up a little bit higher. And you look at her, velocity, really good. So she's a strong underwater kicker. That's great. If you move over to the surface side, she dips down to 1.38 and 1.38 twice. And she's got pretty good stroke rate, 1.0. That seems to be about right for a 100 flyer. She dips down to 1.1. And maybe if she'd learned to hold that distance a little bit more at that stroke rate, that would help. So John's going to go over some of the things that he did with her.
Go ahead, next slide. So, just some basic things. One, just really holding her underwaters. She's really good underwater, but can't quite last in a race. And then real big focus on distance per stroke, counting her strokes, making sure she's holding the same stroke count in the different training sets we're doing. Those were probably the biggest things. She was kind of dialed in on a good stroke rate, so that wasn't really something we had to work on that hard. But really using the data, trying to identify what are the key components based on the data that you need to work on. For her, in her case, it was holding her underwaters and trying to make sure she's counting her strokes and holding a good stroke count if she got fatigued. So those are the things we focused on. And a side note, we're comparing an in-season meet to kind of a meet we rested for in the fall, but this was like a 55 mid 100 flyer from her freshman year. So, that's relevant to where she went after this. So go ahead, next slide.
Yeah, so a little bit later, she goes 54.2, so she dropped by 3 seconds. And you can just see, and we're getting kind of close in time, so I'm going to try to hustle here a bit. But, you can see her underwater stayed really good, even got a little bit better, stayed under longer. It's even faster. You jump over to her velocity, and she took one of those 1.3s away. She still had one at the end, so she still got some work to do. And I know John did some parachutes work with her and I was going to show some, but we're close. I think I'll just move forward. He worked on a lot of things just trying to get her distance per stroke better at that stroke rate. So he did a lot of parachutes, a lot of power tower, those types of things, and different sets to get her comfortable swimming a little bit further at that tempo. Abby is the one that I did that comparison in the very beginning when I compared her 2023 to 2024. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But like I said, the little things matter. If you can get somebody over 8 lengths or over 4 lengths or whatever to get the components so that they're a little bit better, you'd be shocked at the end of the race, and it makes a difference. So, here in early October, you just look at her breakout distance and go from 13 all the way down to 5. And if you go to the next slide, this is what he kind of worked on.
If you really looked, she did a couple things. One, she wasn't holding her underwaters. 2, her stroke rate was not quite good enough. And then really important, I think her last turn was 1.4 at 2023 Big Tens. It's really slow. So we just focused on those things. Fast turns, get into the turn fast, hold your underwaters on everything we did. That's pretty basic stuff. But when you can use the data and show it, I think the swimmers really identify with it a lot more, and they're eager to change it.
Go ahead to the next one. Yeah, if we can move to the next one. Yeah, so, this is her Big Ten, this year. And as you can see, she improved quite a bit on her underwater all the way through. She did so much more. And she also increased her stroke rate a little bit, and so her velocity is higher, and she dropped about 6 seconds. Those little things matter. Let's go ahead and move forward because we're right at time. I do want to go into the You want to go through this
Yeah, just
first?
go real quick.
Okay.
This is a swimmer of mine that hadn't had a best time since her sophomore or junior year in high school. And I think, unfortunately, we've all had somebody like that. And she was in her junior year at Purdue, and we're really trying to pull out all the stops to see what she could do to improve. And, really the couple basic things we really focus on with her, a lot of power, improving her pullouts with a lot of, power. When I asked her, she said it was really breaking down the components of her pullouts, when we did a lot of resistance work. I also really emphasized, although this doesn't quite show up in how she did, holding a certain stroke count all the time in practice. And then we did work on her stroke rate a little bit, specifically for the hunter breast and the end of the tuner breast.